Hello everyone and welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. Making a video for you guys today of another machine that I have recently acquired. And I'm basically, I don't know if I've mentioned it before in a different video, but when I see a machine that I think I want to restore, I try, if the price is affordable, I try to go ahead and get it when I can. And I do that because it's not good candidates for sewing machine restoration can come along at any time. Sometimes, I'll go months and I don't really see anything, and all of a sudden I'll see machines that come up, one right after the other. And so I don't necessarily want to wait until it's convenient always. And so even if I'm not ready to restore it, if I find a machine that needs rescuing, waking up, as I like to say, a lot of the machines I get have not been used in decades. They sometimes have been stored well and sometimes not. But anyway, I wanted to show you all the most recent sewing machine. Now this one came in a case. I've been sort of refocusing what I'm looking at for machines and trying to focus more on those in cases, not because they're better. I love vintage sewing machine tables, and it is entirely possible that you will see sewing machine tables in the future that I've acquired. But I used to, basically, I found lots of machines and tables, and when you're looking for a machine, there are a lot of reasons why you might want a table, not only because the tables were made beautifully, as well as the sewing machines were, like so many other things back in the day, but because you may need it. Sewing with a machine built into a table has a lot of advantages, and those of you who are sewers probably know that already. But let's see, this machine came in a case. It is I'm going to say 1957, 1958 or so. And there is the name Necchi. For those of you who've watched my channel for a while, you know I'm very fond of Necchis, especially the zigzag models. And that basically runs everywhere from the late 1940s or even before the war. Those are harder to find. But late 1940s up in through the 1950s, all the way to about 1960 or so. This is what I call the great golden era of Necchi. Eventually, Necchi would do what many all the European brands of domestic sewing machines did. They would begin to change, basically to cost-saving measures to try to keep production in Europe. It would eventually fail, and they would all basically offshore to Japan anyway. But they tried, and sometimes they did that with results that were not always great for the sewing machine. Now, this particular model is not one of those. This is from what I call the great heirloom era of domestic sewing machines by Necchi. They are some of the greatest zigzag machines ever made. Their straight stitches are very nice too. But anyway, I thought I would kind of show you guys, give you kind of a view of how this case works. Now, as I turn this, you will notice that the latch is the machine is actually sitting in a tray, but you can't see it because the latch, instead of hooking up to a buckle high above the I call it the tray, the base of the carrying case, it actually goes underneath. And I don't know if that was considered more secure or not. You can see the clasp here. The clasps need to be cleaned, they need to be oiled, but they're functioning at the moment. This machine, thankfully, I'll get the other buckle, which is the same. This machine, thankfully, does not have any weird smells. If your machine does have a mustiness to it, this can happen usually because the sewing machine was often stored in a basement or a place that had more moisture content. Who knows? You never know where you're going to find machines. And anyway, because the sewing machine cases are very great at preserving machines, keeping them less dusty, less grimy, I'm generalizing here, they unfortunately also hold in moisture if your machine has been stored in a moist environment. There are techniques for getting rid of that. I'm trying to remember if I covered that in the video. If not, you guys help remind me. We've got so many videos now, I sometimes forget, to be honest. I have to go back and search my own channel, guys. But anyway, we can talk about that. Spring, thank God, is on its way. And, you know, the days are getting longer. You know, sunshine is coming back. And sunshine is actually one of the techniques you can use to help sanitize or deodorize your sewing machine cases. But that's for a different day. So I'm going to go ahead and take if I can get all my buckles loose here, go ahead and take the cover off, and you guys can see what I managed to find. Now, you guys have asked me before, hey, where do you get your sewing machines? Typically, I find machines to purchase and rescue or restore in a lot of the places you guys find to purchase them. Places like Craigslist or Kijiji, which is very popular in Canada, or sometimes at Facebook Marketplace I find them. And you know, you never know. And there are also online auction houses. These are the auction houses that you might go to. You know, before COVID, people went there in person, and you'd go on usually weekends. You know, there'd be an auction and bidding and so forth. Well, they've moved them online, and I sometimes find these. And it just depends on, you know, you can go in and bid. But here's the key, guys. Unlike a site like eBay, which is great for finding parts, if you go to an online auction site and the auction is in driving distance for you, then you can go and physically pick up what you've won. It's the shipping that is so, unfortunately, very dangerous for vintage sewing machines, because a lot of people don't pack them properly and they get destroyed in shipping. And that's why I don't order them off of eBay. I did in the early days. I was really excited to look for certain models, but anyway, I wanted to, and I'm actually noticing here as I'm making the video, when I look at this is a two-tone pink and cream colored Necchi. Now you guys may remember the Necchi Supernova that I showed recently. I think recently. It's a cream and olive or sage colored, whatever name you want to use for that green, and it has the same shape, and I'll do a different video on the differences because this one came out after that one. It's again used the same body, but they made some changes, and this is called the Supernova Ultra, right? So again, every time you come up with a new model, you got to do something a little different. We'll talk about those differences in a different video, but I want to kind of show this to you guys today. And one thing to mention, when I'm looking through the video, it makes the pink look brighter than it actually is to my eyes. I've got nice sunlight, maybe kind of a northern exposure here, but beautiful natural light. When I'm looking at this, what I see is more of a, I sometimes hear this described as dusty rose. It's simply a more muted pink. It's pink, but it's not quite as sort of candy, you know, what you guys are seeing on the video. We'll take a look. I'll see if I can do any editing to get it closer. But the actual pink is not quite this bright, and it can vary. But one of the things I noticed, I literally just got this, and you can see the case base, or the tray, as I like to call it, has this sort of speckled, you know, I don't know what this material is. It's some sort of, I think it used to be called contact paper, but I'm not really sure. I don't think it's painted. I think it was some sort of foil. You know, cabinets, sometimes cabinets can be bought that way, the less expensive cabinetry for kitchens and so forth. The foil it's basically an adhesive film that's put on. In any case, I wanted you guys to see this because unlike the Supernova, the green and cream model that has been converted to, in the past, the prior owner has converted it to a block, I call it the dual outlet block cord, which was used for Japanese machines. And that was because this, let's move this out of our way. These switches, the original switches, okay, there's one for the light, one for the motor, and it goes min and maximum. But remember, this is the age when Necchi was introducing pretty sophisticated electronics. Okay, it's not digital, but the electronic way to control motor speed and the torque from the motor is pretty ingenious. Unfortunately, it's from, how many years ago is that now? 60 plus years. And what has happened to some of those machines is that if the electronics have failed, then it can be difficult to find the capacitors or other components of that quite remarkable creation and innovation for the time. But this one, and again, I have not started it. You guys know my little rule here. I often want to look at a machine. I want to see how stiff it is before I try to turn it on. I have to inspect, and I'm going to need to repair or replace the foot pedal and cord. Certainly the cord, and this is not going to surprise any of you who have bought vintage sewing machines. Many of them need cords repaired or replaced, depending on what the problem is with the cord. And that is not unusual for any brand of machine, and for Italian machines especially. So let me show that to you guys. Here is the shape. This is the actual plug. And of course, Necchi, like some of the other brands, would change. Necchi, the earlier Necchis, like the BU Mira I have, it has a more of a sort of semi-oval shaped plug, and that was something that was actually shared, I believe, with the FOF, the German standard for the plug shape anyway. And then Necchi would change it to this little, and I think this may have had to do with, I'm not actually sure why Necchi changed it, but they did. But what I want you guys to see, this is the original plug, and you can see, you know, the Italians, even with the design embossed on the plug, they have a little stylized thing there. Very clever. But if you look, guys, look right here. The stress points on cords are often where it bends, and you can see the insulation is tired here. It's cracking. If I can get this to focus for you. There we go. You can see the cracks in the insulation. And you know, it is 60 something years old. I don't know if I've noticed that the Italian machines typically can do this a little bit more. You can see, here's the foot pedal I'll show you in a moment, but you can see again the stress point, and what's happened is the jacketing insulation has crumbled, it's dry rotted. Not only is it cracked, it's coming apart, and on the inside you see something that looks sort of, let me get my pen here to point for you. It's a little tough to make out. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Okay. If you look past the green here, guys, you see this right here. That's one of the wires. Come on, I want this to focus. Here we go. This is the little white area or off-white area you see right here. That's one of the wires, and it has a further coating, and it is, we can assume that it is old, brittle, and tired. So that's all going to have to be replaced. And you guys know I love to preserve things, but not in this case. It is just not worth it. And the good news is, you can't do this with every brand, but for some of the FOFs, some of the German brands, as well as the Necchis, some of them have reproduction cords. And I may have one. I actually put in an order, I think it may have been a few years ago, and I think I ordered one of these because I had to get a certain minimum order, and I ordered one, and I think it's sitting in my stash. I'll have to go and rummage through to make sure, but I think I have a new replacement that will be fitting, and so that's nice. I don't have to buy it to make sure. Once I've gone through the machine and I've started to get things loosened, when I first go to turn the motor on, I'm going to be checking to see if the motor controls down here still work. And if they do, that's wonderful. If you have one of these machines, keep in mind that you actually, those controls may still work for quite some time. Who knows? But a lot of it has to do with how it was stored, how it was treated in its lifetime, and sometimes just, it's really not known. No one knows why some will continue to work and others fail. However, the good news is, and when I go through to show you guys some of the work on the other Necchi Supernova, but it's not an Ultra, right? It's the one that came out right before this one. I'll show you guys how I saved an earlier machine. It was actually a straight stitch version of the olive and cream colored Necchi Supernova. It was called the BF, or Bravo Frank. And I was able to do basically, you can quit using these little switches here that connect to all the electronics, and you can connect both, you can connect the motor cord to, you can create that and create, you can rework this to use a block style cord, because if you can't get capacitors, you can't repair the electronics, you don't want to lose this amazing machine. So there is a way to do that. And I think I may have lost the light bulb in that one. That's actually some years ago. I don't remember if I did a video on that. But we'll talk about it with the other machine. But for right now, this lovely two-toned pink, again, 1950s, not surprised to see pink. Or turquoise, along with many other colors in that period. Let's see. I'm basically, we'll talk about the features in another video here, but in terms of how it compares to the earlier Supernovas, because there were changes. You see the reverse button, again, spring-loaded, and you definitely want to, I see over here, I'm getting some movement with the feed dog, so that's not gummed up. That doesn't mean it's ready to, to sit down and start sewing up a storm, but at least it's moving. And then we have, of course, the controls here like we've had on other Neckis. This has to do with stitch width, okay? And we'll talk more about that in another video. We have needle position, again, adjustment. You can be center, left, or right. That was a luxury. We have stitch length over here. What else do we have? We have a dial up here. Now this dial, you think, well, why is that there? That's because that is a dial that is used as a setting for cams. Of course, this was a cam capable machine. That would not have been true with the straight stitch version of this, but I'm highly drawn to the zigzag versions because I believe Necchi, not only did Necchi really make zigzag a thing in domestic sewing machines. Again, zigzag was a feature in industrial machines for decades, but when it finally came to home machines, Necchi really put that on the map. They weren't the only company doing it, but they were. I suspect they were one of the most successful. And if you ever see the zigzag stitch quality of a Necchi from this period, they're incredible, and that's one of the things that really draws me to them. And they have a really I call it the Vespa scooter look, or maybe I think I read that somewhere. That's not my. I didn't originate that metaphor or that analogy. And of course, it has its hideaway bobbin winder. It wasn't good enough to hang it here. They wanted to make it look a certain way. And of course, when you pull this down, you can push down and then the wheel moves over, it swings over, and then it lines up with the pulley. Okay, and then when you're done, I'll demonstrate this bobbin winder and how it works, because it is, like many things Italian, it has its own way of working. They didn't want to copy anyone. And then when you're done, you push down, it swings back over, and it slips in. Just this device alone had to have really added cost. And we'll talk more about cost and how they started to reduce their cost in this machine. Still, the drivetrain and the all-steel components that make it a machine were preserved, thankfully. So this is still an heirloom quality machine, but I'll point out some of the changes they were making. They were already under pressure to get the cost down. But they didn't compromise the quality of its sewing capacity, and that's where I draw the line between this and some of the machines that would come later, where they just kept taking, quality out. Okay, this case actually has pretty good rubber feet, shockingly. It's very hard because a lot of the rubber coatings on the Necchi power cords obviously are not some of the best when they're 60 years old. And you guys can see the side here. Again, I'll talk more about the comparison. Some of you may already be noticing some of the differences. If you do, kudos to you for being able to spot those. And down here, of course, is the big It's like a giant transformer or speed reducer, state of the art, and I'm sure it won technology awards back then because it was, they were way out there ahead of the game. And the fact that any of these things actually still work is amazing. Okay, but again, in a future video, we will talk about how to, if yours doesn't function and you can't find parts, your Necchi can still live. Here we go on the back. You can see this machine is not missing its spool pins. It's capable. It's set up for double needle stitching if you want to. I should say it's set up for, it's capable of double needle stitching. And down here, let's zoom in and you can see, of course, it says Necchi Supernova Automatica. Maybe it didn't say Ultra. No, it does. It does. It says Ultra over here. It says Mark II. Again, they kept coming out with more versions. Made in Italy. It's still made in Pavia, Italy. And what else to show you? Of course, again, something else you always want to look for in a vintage machine. One of the signs of quality is this take-up lever is made of steel. It's like a nickel-plated metal. It's, of course, spring-loaded. Now, down here is what this looks to be like some sort of resin or plastic component. So again, you want to be gentle. Don't let this slam down. Treat your machine with respect. And what else to show you? This actually controls the setting up of the cams up top. So we'll look at that. Now, when I got this machine, I bought it based on photographs, and I couldn't tell and I cannot tell if what I'm looking at here is completely dirt. I have not cleaned this with any great level of detail yet. And this is either a piece of something stuck here, or it could be a piece of damage to the paint. And I don't know which one it is yet. It may be. Either way, the machine is remarkably free. It's got some dust and dirt. I think it's going to clean up beautifully. And usually, you see some nicks in the paint, some level of paint damage, even in a machine that looks pretty mint. So far, I think this one is going to be one of the nicest in terms of its paint finish. Has nothing to do with the functioning of its sewing. Everything here is quite smooth. But, some of this is dirt. This one here could be paint. It could be where, a pin, a sewing pin got in there. Who knows what it is? It's hard to know sometimes. But I'm being picky in that regard because, and then we've got some little scratches here. And I'm going to experiment, guys, and see if I have some compounding, automotive paint compound, and I'll see if any of it might work to buff some of this out. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. This is, remember, a 60-year-old consumer product. And the fact that it looks this nice, by the way, this is not a paint nick. This is some sort of marking, and I'll have to go back into the manual to remember what it was for. It may have something to do with a tension setting. I really don't know. And of course, the Supernovas have this wonderful feature. If you haven't noticed already, you may notice. You may have been wondering about the needle plate, and of course, in the past, you would have had a plate, and it came optional, or maybe it included it. You had zigzag plate, you had straight stitch plate, and you may have even had a separate plate. I think I have a separate plate for the Necchi Biumira for embroidery or free motion work. But this particular design has a revolving needle plate with different templates. So instead of swapping out the plate, there's a little device underneath the chassis, and we'll look at that in a different, as I go through the machine, we'll take a look, because again, I want to clean it, oil it, make sure it's working. I don't want to, stress it out too much, because it may not have been touched in who knows how long. But look at this, and then it revolves, it spins around, and you can see how look at the beautiful, how close everything is is created. Again, it's just amazing. There is a class 15 bobbin down here. It is a side-loading bobbin, and these machines are, we'll see what this one turns out to be like, guys, but these are remarkably quiet, and they don't vibrate very much because, again, the parts are so tightly positioned without much space or slack between them that you don't get a lot of vibration. The trade-off, of course, is that they will typically come frozen. Now, when I turn the hand wheel, thankfully, I'm getting up and down motion here with the needle. And if I take, and again, I'm testing this. If I get any major resistance, I stop. Because as you guys know, we don't want to stress the machine. This is spring-loaded, so I should remember, right? See that? It comes there, and I typically like to control this with my thumb or my finger instead of just letting it slam, okay? It's 60 years old. Let's give it a break here. But look at the needle. This is one way you can check. This doesn't mean that the zigzag is going to be ready to fly, to take off and sew beautiful stitches yet. But watch the needle. Actually, if I zoom in a little bit better for you all, that might be of use. Here's your needle. Now let's go to the left, it moves, okay? Come back to the center and let's go to the right, it moves. And I'm not getting any major resistance. So I'm getting movement. Of course, up here is usually, you might get some gumming up here, and I'll show you guys how to look inside of here. But normally, I say normally, if there is a normal, usually it has to do with where the needle bar is, because the needle bar has to make a sideways motion, and that's typically where you most often will get frozen movement, where you can't get a zigzag stitch. And right, let's see, where's my pointing pen here? Right here is, I'll try to zoom in, guys. It's a little of kind of an odd thing to showcase. Maybe I can get a little bit more light there. There we go, right there. That is a shaft, if you will, and the needle bar moves back and forth on that. And for reasons I don't understand why, but those, either because it didn't get used as much as the straight stitch and the vertical motion of the needle bar, but typically that is the motion that will gum up first. Sometimes you get one of these machines and nothing moves. So that is helpful, and I couldn't tell, you know, the auctions don't give you a lot to go on, and I couldn't tell if this was going to be frozen. It's a Necchi, and I often expect them to be, because again, they were engineered to have such tight spacing between the moving parts, which is admirable from an engineering standpoint. You know, you could argue that's a quality thing, although it doesn't really, you know, the Singers don't have that, and they are some of the, you know, finest quality machines made. So this is more of a subjective thing. But I do notice that they have some of the lowest vibration. I'm talking about the Necchis here. So my latest find, if you will. And by the way, always be careful when you're looking into the sewing machine stash, as it were, because in the bottom tray here, and it's kind of hard to see with the silver tray, there's a straight razor, not a straight razor, a razor blade just sitting there. Somebody had used it for sewing and cutting, and that's fine. Be careful when you put your fingers down in here. And usually, I don't see these as often. I usually see pins and or needles and stuff. And oh, one last thing I did not want to forget. I promised to talk about the foot pedal. Now, Necchi foot pedals vary. Sometimes you get a carbon pile foot pedal like this one, and sometimes they're metal, like the one that I have with my green and cream machine, and sometimes you get an original Necchi pedal like this one. I don't know if this was original to this machine or not. The cord is green, and it's possible, I don't know if Necchi had a white or a cream or a pink version of this cord. The replacements are black, and that's fine. I'm grateful to have a replacement. This was Necchi's answer to Singer. You guys, of course, will know that the Singer button-style foot pedal is actually its rectangular shape, it's sort of a bit longer, you know, a longer version of this way. The Necchi sits like this, and here's a button, and here's a place to rest one part of your foot, and of course you roll your foot. And I'll be opening this one up. I think I've opened up one of these before. It's been a while. I don't see them very often. I'll inspect it and take a look and decide if I want to continue to use it. The feet on it are in remarkably good shape. They were and are rubber. Now they're not super soft, but they're not cracked. I'm actually impressed. But of course, I am never impressed normally with vintage Necchi cords. As I mentioned to you guys, this cord will have to be replaced if I keep the pedal. I love the look of the pedal. The pedal is, again, Necchi's version of the Singer carbon style, carbon pile, foot pedal, speed controller, and of course they did their own design of it. So we'll take a look, and that'll be another video coming up. But I appreciate you guys watching. I'm really excited to be getting into, hopefully soon, warmer weather, and this natural light, which again is giving my pink Necchi a rather candy-like glow here. It is more of a dusty rose color, but I'm just happy to get a Necchi that has all of its parts moving, and we'll be making some videos with this one, and I'll talk to you guys about, again, I think it's been a long time since I did a video of one of these Supernovas and how incredible they were. And they were pretty darned expensive as well. So whoever bought this one, it came with the carry case, and it was crazy expensive. And if, you know, occasionally somebody would buy a table when they really wanted to go for broke and money was no object, or they had to make payments for a long time. But here it is all these years later, and I'm really looking forward to, now that it's been rescued, right, and it needs to be run, or it needs to be gone through, and then eventually I hope to find a new home for it. I have one, what do I have? I have one Necchi BU in that giant desk that, you know, we decided to keep that desk for a host of reasons. It's probably the fanciest sewing machine table I've ever seen in terms of what the customer would have paid for it, but actually those drawers are being used, and it's a big, lovely piece of furniture. But if you are interested in Necchi vintage sewing machines, they, just like all the other brands, they came standard in carry cases like this one, and the tables were extra. And of course they had all kinds of accessories that you could buy. But my gosh, just paying for something like this was it was not a small thing. So I don't blame people for saying, well, I think I'll take it in the case and think about the table. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, we'll talk more about this machine, more about the various control pieces, but I just wanted you to see it. As you know, Necchi zigzags, Singer straight stitchers, like particularly the rotary shuttle Singers, like the 201s, the 301s, the featherweights that you all are, I'm sure, quite familiar with. These are some of the best machines ever made. But then again, I don't turn up my nose at a wonderful Japanese clone, because they have a lot of quality built in as well. So I guess the good news is, no matter what your taste in vintage sewing machines, it's pretty likely there's something for you that will be a good fit for you, because there were so many choices back then. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned as we roll out yet more videos, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.